Hey everyone, welcome back to the Pickup Line. My name's Ethan, and alongside me is Hannah. Hannah, how's it going?
Hi, it's good. I'm a little sleepy, but as soon as I saw you and our special person we're having on today, I got really, really excited and energized. So,
I'm excited about this episode. It's going to be
yes,
fun. So we were just talking about selfies. How's your selfie game, Hannah?
I have shit selfie game.
Same. I always get yelled at by Jessica has to take the photos because I suck at them.
I don't know what to do with myself. And I have friends who are always like, "Let's take pictures." And I'm like the one that's like, I have to do it again. I just don't know what to do. I don't know what shape to make. So, yeah.
What shape to make?
It's all about shapes, photography and positioning yourself. It's all about shapes, and I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. But anyway, we're not talking about selfie game today.
Well, selfing and dating kind of ties together, so we could talk a little bit about selfie game. But I think we
Again.
can.
I'm just excited to bring on our guest is all.
Yes, I would like to welcome none other than one of our first callers ever here on the Pickup Line, Ameet, the mustache Mathew. Ameet, how's it going, man?
It's going great. How are both of you?
Well,
Good.
I have to agree with Hannah, as she said backstage, loving the stash.
We're always objectifying you. The whole community.
That's true. Kenneth does it too. We always talked about how jacked Ameet is. He is jacked. We do. We have to stop objectifying Ameet.
Well, we're going to talk about arranged marriages and maybe dive into some just like cultural differences that Ethan and I probably are very unaware of when it comes to just dating as we do here. So we're going to pick Ameet's brain. Ameet, you're from India, right?
Yep. I was born in India, lived there for 21 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wait, how old? Can you say how old you are, or do you not comfortable saying
I'm
that?
like 29.
No. Oh, shit. Dude, by your voice, I can't even tell that you weren't born in America. Like, I know you weren't because you've told me in the past, but I can't tell.
Yeah. I grew up in, my grandmother has a strong British accent because she was taught by British school teachers. And that kind of gets passed on a little bit by generation. Like my mom has a stronger one. Mine's even less. Eventually it's going to die out. But
Have you spoke English your entire life, or when did you learn it?
It's my first language.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I love that when you meet someone from like overseas, your English is so good. I just met someone from Sudan. Well, like we became friends. She's from Sudan, and I was like, "Where did you learn English?" She's like, "It was my first language." I'm like, "Oh, fuck!" Like, so
all of my schooling was in English. So
right, yeah, that's pretty.
Oh, cool.
That'll happen. So, if you guys want to call in and have questions or comments for any of us, 951-364-2430. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, call into those questions. I am not going to be offended by anything.
If you could, talk us through a little bit of what dating is like in India.
Yeah.
So India is pretty big, so
yeah, that's what I wanted to start with.
As compared to America.
It's the 6th biggest country in the world, if I'm remembering correctly. But it is diverse, both in terms of like regions and religions and customs, as well as social strata. The poorest of the poor and the richest of the rich are going to live very, very different lives. And I just wanted to start by saying I am speaking from my own personal experience. And depending on where you come from in India, you may have your own versions of this, but I'll touch on what I've seen for the most part. Dating in India is interesting. While we have been opening up more and more to Western influence, some of us, there is still a generational gap, right? The older generations are still stuck in their ways, and the newer generations are trying to adapt to a more global society.
Okay.
Because India values success in terms of your career and your future a lot, and because it's a family-centric community where you have a lot of joint families as opposed to your traditional American nuclear family with just, two parents, kids living in a house. You end up with a lot of pressures from your family as well. Now, those pressures change over your lifespan. As a child, you are, or at least a lot of my friends and even myself to an extent were discouraged from socializing a lot with people of the opposite sex. Yeah, we were said, hey, like now's not the time to focus on, dating. Now's not the time to focus on that sort of stuff. You have to get your heads in your books, study, get to a certain point. And once you're comfortable, you can date.
Okay.
Now, the problem is that when you start at that young age and you don't socialize people going up into their teens, and then you say, okay, let's focus on your studies, and you go into college and you still say, let's focus on your studies, then they'll say, focus on finding your career. And that basically the point where you're expected to start dating and start finding someone for yourself
Mhm.
moves further and further ahead in your life.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, when the cultural expectation is that you're married and have kids, your parents are like, where's the girl? Right?
So
Do you
there's a
find
lot
that
of
it's
pressure.
hard without so like having no practice? Did you feel like not really prepared?
And this is where my personal experience plays a big role. I come from a middle class family. My parents are both educated. My mother works. My father has always been like, at least in terms of India, fairly good with gender equality and that sort of stuff. So I have never had that pressure of saying don't talk to women. I
Oh.
have had the pressure of don't date, but not don't talk to women. So I've always had friends who are women. I've always had like I did theater for the longest time. So, like
Really? So you can
yeah.
sing?
We don't do so much musical theater in India, weirdly enough. I
Oh,
can sing, just not very well. I can hold a tune.
Hannah can sing really well.
Oh yeah,
Stop
I
it.
heard that.
We're not talking about this.
Okay, you're right, sorry.
Yeah, we do a lot of like one acts and stuff like that, right? So, which is what I used to do back in undergrad and high school.
Mhm.
Okay,
So yeah,
cool.
yeah, it's pretty fun. But then like as sorry, the theater is pretty fun. As you go through your life, that milestone goes further, and once you reach that age, your parents are like, well, it's time for you to get married. Either bring us at least, and this is for me, right? It's like, hey, bring us a person, or we will find a person for you, right?
That's
And this,
wild.
it
See, and
is
that's something I don't think I could wrap my heads around. I can't imagine my parents picking out a girl for me at all. Could you, Hannah?
You've met my mother, so
Okay, yeah, your mom's cooler. So, yeah. Oh my God, my mom would probably pick out a strong Republican woman that for
oh
me to date.
gosh.
That's for sure. Yes.
I would argue that as Americans, you have your own form of arranged marriage. And I'll get
Really?
into that
Okay.
because we do have a spectrum of arranged marriage. And this is again where I was lucky, right? When my parents came to me, they didn't say, hey, Ameet, here's the girl, go get married, which is what you tend to see on one side of the spectrum, right? The people who are from like really maybe people who haven't been exposed as much to the world and who um, haven't been exposed to as much global media do face that problem when the girl may not have been educated, for example,
Mm.
right? She has no choice but to really listen to her parents and to get married for her future,
Mhm.
right? Whereas, if the guy hasn't been socialized on how to interact with women at all, he's also stuck where, I have certain friends and acquaintances who literally cannot speak to women. They're like, think about Mike Pence, the meme of Mike Pence, right? He can't
Right.
be alone in a room with a woman. That's the kind of thing you're seeing, right? Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, arranged marriage can be like Tinder. where your parents say, hey, here's a list of women. Which ones of these kind of like match with your sets of ideals, or
So when they
your
say here's a list of women, what does that list include? Like, what type of information are you given?
So it's super superficial, right? So your parents will basically act as your Tinder filters. They'll say,
They've got like a headshot and like,
it's happened. It's happened.
oh man.
It's happened. Basically, they will look for things that they want because they're projecting their
Mhm.
kind of desires onto you, like Ethan
Right.
said, right? Oh, like Ethan said, your mom would have picked a certain type of woman. My mom was looking for a good Malayali Christian girl for me, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
Yes.
yeah. So basically, they will act as a filter. And my parents said, okay, they can't be taller than Ameet because that will make him insecure. Uh,
Oh,
they can't be they have to be Christian because I want Amit to go back into church.
Mm.
They have to be like really close to their family because we're family oriented and we want them to be like the other side of the family to be family oriented as well. They have to be educated and willing to work and that sort of stuff, right? And they have to want children. That's another one that they had. And
Mhm.
and they also have these really like superficial things, like they can't be too dark skin color wise.
really?
Okay.
Yeah, colorism is a problem in India.
No shit.
Yeah. um they have to be of a certain social status. That's another big thing in India. So certain families will and I'm talking about Hindu families here, and my girlfriend's actually gone through this, where some of her friends will say their parents will match their star signs through this process called the kundli. uh, and they will match their castes and they will match their religions and everything like that, right? So you end up with kind of like this very limited pool of people to select. And then going through that list, you say, okay, I like these people, I'm going to talk to them. And you end up with, you know, uh, someone that you could get married to. The problem is, again, family oriented culture and a parent driven system.
Okay.
So you're basically chaperoned until you're married,
Okay.
right?
So, like, if you go on a date, you have to have a third party with you.
It depends. Some people are more liberal these days, and they will be okay with that.
Okay.
But sometimes all of your dates are like family dates, which is like both sides of your family, like sitting down together in a living room, and you're talking to each other, and they're just like weighing in on the conversation. Kind of like awkward
Really?
Thanksgiving dinners. Yeah,
Interesting.
So you don't get any alone time even then, essentially.
a lot of Indians are virgins until they get married.
Well, I don't even mean sex. I just mean alone time.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like, you don't even get.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, they will give you some alone time, but it's not as much as if you were dating. The process is actually very, very. It's much shorter. You don't pick your timelines, right? Sometimes astrology even dictates the timelines, which is ridiculous.
Wow, I didn't know about the astrology thing.
Hmm.
That's
Astrology is huge in India. They use a lunar calendar for most stuff, and
interesting.
if you're a Hindu family, they will check your star sign when you were born and match that with the star sign of the person whom you're going to marry and see if you're compatible and that sort of stuff. It's wild.
Yeah, chicks do that on Tinder too. No.
So, and just for sake of clarity for this episode, you're obviously an atheist.
Hmm.
Your parents would probably still love you to marry a good Christian woman, I'm
Oh
assuming.
yeah. Oh yeah. If I said, hey, I want to marry this Christian girl, they'd be like, great. When's the date?
Oh, amazing. That's so funny. So have you ever so have your parents ever like presented you a list and you've been like, yeah, like I'll check this one out?
Not a list per se. But they have sent me kind of like profiles of people, and they'd say, "Hey, go talk to this person, see if you like them." We don't know how Christian they are, so they may be, like because people sometimes are religious on the books, but
Right.
not really, they don't really believe. For example, my girlfriend is she considers herself religious, but she doesn't actually hold any of the beliefs.
Okay.
She treats it as, yeah, you know, it's cultural for her. She grew
Right.
up in that thing. She likes the festivals. She enjoys the food. That's what it is to her, and I'm fine with that.
So if you two were to get married, would it be a Christian wedding, or have you not thought that far? And I'm putting my
Yeah, like
right now.
Ethan.
So I haven't thought that far. And I'll get into the weddings. In fact, Ethan, I sent you some pictures, which I'd be like super happy if you could pull up.
Yes, I
I
can.
have
Just whenever you're ready, let me know.
I have not thought that far. I wouldn't have a problem with an Indian wedding. I'm not particularly picky about the kind of ceremony that we have,
Okay.
but the ceremonies are significantly different, right?
Oh, yeah.
A Christian wedding tends to be what, 60 people ish in a room.
It varies.
Well, it can vary.
Yeah,
It can be up to, 100, 150.
100, 150. Yeah, a small Indian wedding's like 500.
Okay. Okay. Definitely different then.
In India. So
500? How much
they-
does that cost? Oh my God.
So you get so the wedding industry in India is massive, especially for Hindu weddings, and it lasts over a couple of days, right? So people may not always attend every day.
Okay, so I actually, to just put a quick pause in that, my close work colleague invited me to, they're having an Indian wedding, his sister, which is in Texas, ironically,
Ooh, fun.
next month. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't make it. I feel really
Oh.
bad. But he was telling me about it, and he said I was like a 4-day long wedding. And I'm like, what? I'm like, it's not just one night. He's like, no. He's like, it's multiple nights.
It's multiple
would-
nights.
Is it like, do they have like a DJ every night? Like, how does this work?
I'll explain. And let me start with like the cultural weddings first, right? So if you pull up reference 1, Ethan, the first one I sent you, there we go. This is my parents' Christian wedding.
Oh.
That's how my dad was dressed, in a white, kurta,
Mhm.
and that's how my mom
The
was
night
dressed.
you were made.
Yeah, in a white sari, right? So this is how the weddings, my parents' Christian wedding was. Now, if you
Okay.
flip over to the second one, this is a modern Christian wedding.
Right.
As you can see, Western influence, the country opened up between my parents' generation and this generation. The bride is now wearing, much more Western outfit. The groom's wearing a suit, basically. Right? So
Right.
even within Christian weddings, you can get that spectrum. Right? No single person can tell you exactly what a wedding is in India, even for a simple Christian wedding. Now, if you go to the third one, this is a friend of mine. This is a traditional Hindu wedding that happened like less than a year ago.
Aw.
Right? And this is the religious ceremony. This is just
Right.
one of the days, right? And this is their traditional wedding outfit, right? The guy on the right, the girl on the left, right? And 4 is that was a South Indian one. This is a relative of mine, and it's a North Indian style Hindu wedding. So you can see the styles are completely different.
Very, yeah,
Drastically.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Drastically. It's so
yeah.
interesting.
And both traditional, although this one is much more modern and less religious, I would say. So there's a whole spectrum here, and no single person, like if someone tells you that this is the only way that it happens in India, they're not speaking for the whole population.
Okay.
I haven't even gotten into the Muslim population in India, which is a bigger population than the Christian population, right?
Yeah, my
They
friend's
have
Muslim.
their own
That's
traditions.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's gonna be unique experiences all over the board.
I would
Now,
love to go to an Indian wedding, though. It just seems like it'd be such a good time. Like, I hear they learn all these dances that they showcase at the events. Like,
yes.
that, to me, that is my type of thing. Like, I love the idea of coordinated dances.
Oh my gosh, it's great. I've actually choreographed a couple for some of my relatives' weddings.
That's so
cute. Yeah, we did Uptown Funk for my cousin's wedding.
Love that song.
It was good. My cousin, my family, like Christians don't usually do the dancing thing for for weddings,
Mhm.
more somber. Like it's what you see in, it's not different from what you see in the United States.
Right.
So we tend to be much more of a I call it a singing family, whereas the bride's family was much more of a dancing family.
Okay.
So, to participate and, exchange, just to be a part of the whole event, we also did a dance thing. And since I'm the best dancer, apparently, on my side of the family, I was responsible for choreographing it. It was hilarious. Yeah, no, my cousins really can't dance.
I almost went to an Indian wedding one time. I was seeing a guy that I met on Tinder, and I was like, I don't want anything serious. And he's like, okay, you want to come to a wedding with me? And I was like, that feels serious.
Oh
You
gosh.
can go to a wedding as friends, though.
There was more to it than that, but
Oh,
that was
okay.
like the thing where I was like, I can't meet his family. He likes me too much, and it wasn't true. But anyway, I regret it because I would have loved to have gone.
I do have an off-topic question from Stilette Leray. I've actually never looked into astrology in India. Is it their own system?
Yes, it is very much its own system. A lot of star signs. It's not. We have like an annual system as well as a. I don't know what the word is, like bigger than annual system, where every year has its own set of stars that mark the year and stuff like that.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, it crosses years and stuff. So there's like people who literally make their careers out of reading star charts. It's in my opinion a huge scam.
I was gonna say you got that
I
here too with
agree.
Zodiac, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So kind
So
of
back to weddings, like
yes.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Ethan. I just wanted to go back to your question about like what does a typical like
Right.
what's more or less common in a Hindu Indian wedding. You have a couple of days. The ceremony is a couple of days long, right? If you the first day is what's called the Mehendi day, right? And
I'm sorry, the Manly Day?
Mehendi,
Oh, Mandy. I
MEH.
thought you said Manly. I'm like,
And then the next day they have the girly day. No. Okay, sorry.
If you open up the next picture I sent you, Ethan, of the hands, this is what we call Mehendi. In English, it's called Henna, right?
really?
Yes.
Ooh.
This is a henna tattoo, and this is what what the bride side of the family participates in. Well, the women at least. It's kind of like a bridal shower before the wedding day, right?
Okay.
They paint each other's hands with henna. And like it's not always traditional stuff. Sometimes people write like funny stuff on their hands. It's interesting.
Do you know like why that was started by chance or like the significance of it?
I
It's okay
don't
if you don't.
know.
I'm just
I don't.
curious.
I don't know. That's a good question. Worth looking into.
Okay, I'll Google it.
Yeah, but mehendi is the Hindi word, or I think it's the Hindi word for henna, and that's what they do on the first day. Meanwhile, the husband's family does its own thing, right? Now, the second day is what's called the barat. The barat is a procession, right? And it essentially it was started in like the medieval times for India, where the prince would like march into the city to claim his wife, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Okay.
He'd come in on a horse, and he'd bring in like drummers and musicians and warriors and stuff like that. This happens on the groom's side, where the groom comes in basically on a horse or an elephant traditionally, but these days, usually they're in a car and the car's like driving down the road with people like dancing and cheering and making a lot of noise on the sides. Ethan, if you have the
Oh.
next picture, I have like a traditional drawing of what. There we go. That's a barat, right? You can see it's basically a royalty that used to do it in olden days, but it's become a part of the whole thing, right?
Right.
So it looks like they'd be pretty fun.
It's fun. It's fun. It's a lot of noise. There's like these days, drones flying, people running around with cameras trying to take pictures of as much as they can, because you're not going to get the whole thing. It's a huge
Right.
procession,
Right.
right? And then after they reach the spot, we have an event called the Sangeet. Sangeet means song, essentially. But this is the part of the ceremony where people do those performances, those choreographed dances, singing, instrument playing, just kind of like an artsy thing that happens.
Right.
Both the bride and the groom side performs a little bit. Sometimes they have a joint thing. I'm not sure, but sometimes the bride and groom also participate. But yeah, that's the Sangeet day. And then the fourth day is the actual religious ceremony, and I think I have a picture of that too. Yes, this is where the ceremony happens, right? This is what's called a Mundup. A Mundup's basically a, what do you call it? I feel like the word starts with a G.
A gazebo.
Gazebo. There we go. It's a gazebo which has been decorated. In the center, they have a fire, right? Cool. And the most common imagery you'll see from this thing is that the husband will have something draped across his shoulder. He ties it to the wife's outfit as well. And the husband leads the wife around the fire a certain number of times to signify, the tying is to signify that they've come together as a couple. And walking around the fire has some significance as well that I just can't remember off the top of my head. Now, kind of talking through some of the... and yes, like I didn't have an arranged marriage. My parents, though, did have an arranged marriage.
That was going to be one of my questions. Yeah.
Yeah. My father and my mother had an arranged marriage. One day, my dad was told by my grandmother to go to a particular address and see if he likes the girl there. Back then, photos weren't so easy to send across the place. There was no internet, no WhatsApp to like shoot pictures and information over. So she said, hey, go over, talk to the family, see if you like the girl and if she likes you. So he went over. My grandmother on my mother's side was there, invited my dad in. They had this whole conversation. My mother had a very fixed set of questions that she needed to go through. One of them was, are you a Christian? Will you allow me to work after we get married? Because this is an actual question. Some people are not okay with their wives working after they get married.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Are you okay? Like, do you want children? Just the basic bare minimum questions. And after that, she was like, yep, I'm okay. I think we can get married. And a couple of months later, they ended up getting married. It was, and they're still together, right? So
is it true arranged marriages are more likely to last than regular marriages?
They have like a pretty low divorce rate.
Yes,
there's a lot that goes into it, though. But
yes, but if you think, like, if I had to ask you the question, Ethan, do you think the increase in divorce in the United States is a bad thing?
No, because it saves a lot of people from abuse.
Exactly, it saves people from relationships that just aren't working. It may not be abuse, right? Like if it's a loveless marriage, if like a lot of reasons, right? Now, because this is such an involved affair where both parents are involved, the community is involved, society is basically like putting pressure on you, it's a very patriarchal system, it discourages people from getting divorced, right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
way more pressure.
And being a patriarchal system, once a woman gets divorced, it is considerably harder for them to get married again.
Interesting.
Right? So you have to consider that. People are thinking, this is my one and only chance to be with a person, and after this is over, I'm done.
Right.
And that discourages divorce. Right?
So they could really, truly be unhappy, and they're going to stay with it out of social pressure alone.
They could be. That being said, I do know people who have gotten divorced, and it is increasing. As time goes on, women are being empowered. They know, hey, you know what? If I'm not happy in this relationship, I can leave and I can find someone. I have a job and I have an
That's good.
education, I can go and work, right? I'm
Right.
not dependent on
That's
this
the
man to
end.
bring home food. Exactly.
Mhm.
Right. So there's it's changing, and people may not be happy with it, but it's changing for good reasons, right?
Yeah, it's definitely way more complicated. And we're like, well, no one gets divorced, so therefore they're all
Therefore it's good.
doing well.
Exactly.
Yeah, like not divorcing doesn't necessarily, sometimes. Did we lose Ethan? Or did we lose
Oh, what the
Ameet?
heck? Yeah, we lost Ameet.
Oh no.
That's
But
not
yeah,
good.
divorce does not always mean.
Ooh, he was back real
Yeah,
quick.
thank you.
Fast trigger, Ameet.
I messed up.
There is a
Oh,
little
you're
bit
good. You're
of
back.
going.
So sorry, where were we at?
I want to make
Can't-
sure. Are we good?
I don't know. Yes, I think we're good.
Okay.
There was an echo for a bit.
There was an echo. I was scared to
Yeah, I
talk.
heard that.
So, not getting divorced doesn't always mean success. It can, but not necessarily.
Now, here's another thing, and it's something I'm quite passionate about. Because it's family oriented, we have this whole meme in Indian culture and on Indian internet where you can almost predict what your parents say when you bring a love marriage up to them.
A love marriage, like not arranged.
Yes, not arranged. It's what they. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. Yeah, it slips my mind that that's not a term that's commonly
Yeah,
used.
I've never heard that term before.
Sorry. Yeah. In India, we say the opposite of an arranged marriage is a love marriage.
Okay.
So it's not arranged; it's for love, right? So when you bring a love marriage up to your parents, you can it's a meme on the internet to say, oh, a marriage is more than just about two people. You're not marrying the individual, you're marrying a family. And I'm not joking. I have heard this line before. Right? So like it's fairly common because it is like I said before, it's a community centric thing, which has its pros, it has its cons, right? Pros being because when it's so community driven, the marriage is not an individual affair, so you have community support. You have nuclear families. I was raised with my grandmother living at home while my parents were working. She was the one who was teaching me, who was raising me, who was cooking for me, right? That like my grandmother basically raised me and my brother, right? And I'm very grateful to that wonderful lady, extremely strong personality, and I miss her. Raising children is easier because you have your community support.
Yeah.
Like you can send the kids over to like one grandmother's house, the other grandmother's house. There's uncles, aunts, everyone's willing to help you. Whereas if you're closed off as a small little family group, you're yourself and you have to depend on maybe a babysitter or whatnot, right? Yeah. Your rent, very often with a joint family setup, you end up moving into one of your parents' houses after getting married and eventually taking over those houses. Ownership of property is much less of a question, and rent is not an expense that you have to think about that much. Even if you are going to live out on your own, your family members are around to pitch in and help, support you, right? And there's two whole families now supporting you, right?
Wow.
And now the cons are it promotes isolation of communities. So because your communities select your potential partners, they tend to be very similar. They tend to have very similar ideas. Because there is an expectation immediately after getting married that you have kids, it does not support childless relationships. In fact, I believe I could be wrong. Don't like please fact check me, but a woman who is not willing to have kids after getting married to someone is grounds for grounds for divorce in India. Like basically it's justified and it would be blamed on the woman.
It may be.
Yeah.
What you're saying, because we don't know for sure.
Yeah. Exactly, it may be.
But it's really bad.
It's yeah. I
It's
mean, like you're expected to have kids, right? I have friends
Interesting.
right now who don't want kids, but there's constant pressure from their families saying, "When you're gonna have kids? When you're gonna have kids? Like I want grandchildren. Like we arranged you with this person so that you would like get us kids by this time, you know."
Yeah.
And that causes fractures, which is in a community setup not very good, right? Because
Right.
you are dependent on this community and you've been brought together by the community. So being separated from that is an issue. And finally, and most importantly, this system favors cis heteronormativity.
Of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nobody's going to arrange for a marriage with, nobody's going to arrange a gay marriage, at least not today,
Right.
Right.
right?
One day.
Is
One
gay
day,
marriage
maybe.
We'll get
legal in
there.
India?
I'm sorry?
Is gay marriage legal in India?
No, gay marriage is not legal in India, no.
Okay.
Okay.
And it recently there was a whole thing in the news about it where there was a couple who went to court to get their marriage ratified, but was not.
Oh.
Hmm.
That's sad.
So, man, where do I even
So-
start?
I know there's so much. So unfortunately, it's a fairly
Broad topic.
a homophobic society, though, or culture.
Yes, and part of it is the fact that it is geared towards families. Part
Mhm.
of it is also colonialism, right? That there is, and I'm not saying it's all colonialism by any means. I'm saying that colonial influence has in fact affected it. There are gods in Hindu mythology, especially certain parts of Hindu mythology, who could be considered gender fluid or even gay, right? I believe in my part of India, which is in Kerala, there's a myth about two of the major gods, Vishnu and Shiva, having a child together. So do with that what you will, right?
Hell yeah. So, what would you say, like, I know this is such a broad question, but like consequences of like your parents or like, let's say your parents, not yours in particular, but
Mhm.
what could be examples of consequences of, not agreeing to an arranged marriage? Like, have you ever heard
So
of there just like not being a choice? What does that look like?
sometimes it's not a choice, right? Sometimes they'll say, "Hey, we need you to get married, or you get out of the house," right?
Okay.
That's very extreme.
Straight up
Doesn't
like
happen all the time.
disownment.
Yeah, I mean, like that
Mhm.
that happens even in the United States when you tell your parents, "Hey, I'm an atheist," right? It happens sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
But or it happens. It's just how certain families are extreme in this aspect, right? Um, Other times it's incessant pressure.
Mhm.
They consider you as having a time to get married, and so they're like, "Oh, like between 20 to 29 or 20 to 30, we expect you to get married," or right after. Like a lot of women end up getting married right after college, like
It's like a
literally.
duty.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, "Okay, I've checked off education. Next thing to check off is marriage. Then I have to check off kids." They're basically going through this checklist of their life and trying to like hit all of the boxes
Okay.
to meet their parents' expectations. So you're kind of like disappointing your parents if you do go and like you're not living up to their expectations, and that's something I've had to deal with because I'm not going to get an arranged marriage. I've decided that, right? And so
how did you have to tell your parents that one day? And if
I
so, like, how did it go?
I did have to tell my parents, right? And it happened because they kept pestering me about getting married, and they kept pestering me about getting married to good Christian women, that I ended up like outright exploding in front of them and saying, "Hey, I don't believe that. I'm not a Christian," right? So like I would have liked to have done it slower in hindsight,
Sometimes you just
but
burst.
yeah.
Right.
Uh,
Hopefully that
yeah,
wasn't too much of a disaster.
nah, it wasn't. It's all fine now. We were able to sort it out. Um,
Good.
Do you still feel any pressure to get married? Do they still ask about it?
I do. And that's more, I think it's more like what single people at my age usually feel. I do want to get married at some point. Um, and, I mean, I do want to have a long-term relationship with someone. Whether it's, stamped with that label of marriage or not is irrelevant. Um, but
To
I
have
see
a companion.
exactly, and
Mhm.
I see a lot of people my age or like a little bit younger than me, getting married around this age, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'm like being slow. Should I be doing this at this point? Should I be thinking about having kids at this point? Because I have some of my underclassmen from India who have started having kids, and I'm like, okay, should I be? Should I be worried? Should I be? It's that little bit of a uh, itch at the back of your head saying like, am I
Yeah.
doing things right?
You
But
and I
then,
are about the same age, Ameet. So like I
yeah.
totally get that. Where I'm like, oh, my like best friend from second grade who I grew up with is having her second child. Like, and I'm over here just like eating chicken nuggets. Like,
Right,
in
like
a
I have
onesie.
I have my like laptop and my gaming setup. I'm like,
Like, can I still
I'm
play
good.
video games if I'm a mom? Yeah. No, I think
Yeah.
about that stuff quite often. Like, if I'm a mom, can I still like do this shit? Like, is that all right? It's definitely a different. I feel like I don't know. We're a different generation for sure.
Yeah.
But yes, I feel like there's a lot of differences and similarities. I mean, especially because
Mhm.
you have so much variety
Yeah.
within, India itself. But um keep going. I had another question, but I distracted myself and I know it'll come back to me.
I wanted to touch on two things that are tied to marriage. And
Okay.
there's a lot more, but they're not necessarily marriage related. Um, two social, I want to call them social evils, that are dying in India, but were part of Indian history. And we have to acknowledge it as a country to do anything about it. And most Indians will say that it was a terrible practice back in the day. The first was sati. It's a SATI. It was a practice by which if a husband died at some point early in their life, at their funeral pyre, there was an expectation for the widow to throw herself into that funeral pyre, ending
Into
their
the
life.
funeral pile? What is
Sorry,
Pyre,
that?
pyre, Pyre, into the
what do you
fire.
mean by that? Like,
Oh. Oh my gosh, you just
So,
reminded me of The Office. I'm so sorry. You've
so
seen the Indian wedding episode? You're like, is it true that if your husband dies, you have to throw yourself on a fire?
well,
Okay,
that's
so
one.
there's truth to that. I thought
There
that it
is
was
truth
just like
to it.
total weird Michael Scott-ness.
It's not total weird Michael Scottness. It was a very common practice a couple of centuries ago, and
Wow.
it's still kind of happening in some of the
wow.
backwards parts of India. Um,
Mm.
it's like basically to show your loyalty to your husband, you have to throw yourself into the fire. But if the wife dies and the husband's alive, they don't have to do jack. So,
Oh my god.
That go figure.
yeah.
Never mind.
uh, but yeah,
Well, I'm glad that that is dying off.
that's one.
Okay.
The other one, which is not yet dying off, not yet fully, not as dead as sati at least, is is the Indian practice of dowry.
Say that one more time. Dowry?
Yes, DOWRY.
Okay, I'm a
Uh,
little bit familiar with that.
if people don't know what it is, it's where you pay a sum to your spouse's family, or you give them a gift of wealth when you get married. And usually, I think in the West, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the husband's family paying for paying the wife's family as kind of like a purchase of property.
There's no
It
payment.
was no,
It
not
was
currently, but
one
like
point.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
think
sorry. In the old
there
days?
was
Yes.
like that used to be a thing. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure.
Well, yeah. In India, it's weird because the wife's family pays the husband to take care of the wife. So it there's almost become this sort of extortion or like game that's played to increase and decrease the amount of dowry that you get. And there's a whole lot of factors that go into it, including physical appearance, number of suitors that they have at a particular point.
You're
Their,
like, I'm
So it's
high
pretty
value right
judgmental.
now.
their educational qualifications. If you have more of a degree, you have to if the husband has a bigger degree, the expected dowry is like if the education gap is wider, the expected dowry goes up.
Mhm.
It's pretty pretty weird and pretty cutthroat. And
So can a family refuse a dowry, or does that ever happen?
they
Like if it's
absolutely
too low?
they absolutely can, and they absolutely, in my opinion, should, because the government has actually outlawed dowry extortion.
That's
Oh,
good.
Yes, it is considered by most of the country as a practice that's not that's looked down upon,
Mm.
right? So it's an interesting thing that happens there.
but do they ever refuse it because they're insulted by the number? Like,
I
hey, this isn't enough money. I want more.
I think they could. It is possible. And it
Or isn't
seems
there like
fairly.
it sounds like it's a negotiation process a little
Yeah,
bit. So
yeah.
yeah,
I think it
I
could
wouldn't want
happen.
someone to haggle over me, or I wouldn't want to have to haggle over like another person. Like that's strange.
Yeah. Huh.
We do have a caller that has some questions.
Ooh,
Ooh,
hello.
So, Secular Skye, you are on with Ethan, Hannah, and Ameet. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well.
Good to hear
hey.
from you.
Hello.
Yeah, good to talk to you guys.
You too. So, what
Okay,
do you got
cool.
for Ameet today?
Yeah, so Ameet, I've got a pretty succinct question, I think, here.
Yeah.
I was just curious. Actually, I don't know if you know the answer to this specifically because it's not just India.
Okay.
But my question is, if you know anything about the similarities and differences between Indian Hindu weddings and Sri Lankan or Nepalese Hindu weddings, since those countries also have a pretty significant Hindu population, and also how interfaith couples are perceived in India today.
I can
Ooh.
answer the second one. The first one, unfortunately, I do not know the answer to. I have limited and I know there's Hindu weddings going all the way into Malaysia and Indonesia as well. So I've only had the experience of India. So I think I'm gonna do a Dr. Josh answer and say that's not my area of expertise.
And as you can probably guess, neither mine or Ethan's.
No, definitely not mine.
Ethan just comes in like, actually.
Here's my degree.
Just super knows about Sri Lankan weddings, just for some reason. Okay, but interfaith marriages.
Yeah, interfaith marriages are interesting in India. They happen, undoubtedly. My cousins are married to Hindus, right? Now, as far as how they're perceived by the middle class, just random strangers, they're received fairly well. They're received like any other marriage, right? One of my aunts actually is married to an atheist. And I found this out very late in my life. Nobody told me I had an atheist in my family.
Oh, that must have been a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I mean, he's a different kind of atheist, not a secular humanist, but
Okay.
still, we had like there's no single characteristic that will define them. But it would have been nice to know that that was a possibility.
Right.
But yeah, like one of my aunts is married to an atheist. One of my cousins is married to a Hindu. It's received well by general society. Now, coming into family dynamics, though, there are definitely issues there, right? And also within like Hindu and Muslim communities and Christian communities, there's an issue, especially Hindu Muslim right now because it's in the news. I've had family members who have refused to attend the weddings of their family members just because they were not Christian ceremonies.
That's so shitty.
It is shitty, and it actually ties to something that I've heard a lot of Americans say, which is, marriage is recognized by the church, which it's not because there are Hindu weddings.
Right.
Right? Like there's Muslim weddings.
Right,
And
yeah.
are you saying those aren't real marriages? No, that's just dumb. But yeah.
Right.
So basically families can be assholes. I've heard stories about aunts and uncles who are not talking to their nephews and nieces because for many years, just because they got married to someone outside of their religion. I have friends like that, right? So within families it can be an issue. Within communities it can be a bit of a political issue because India has pretty big populations of Muslims and Christians along with the majority population. Along with the majority population of Hindus, which is like 75 or 77%, right? So what a lot of Hindus call these days, so there are a lot of Hindu women or Hindu men who are marrying into Muslim families, right? And it is an interfaith marriage. And, they may not change their respective religions. But what happens is a lot of the Hindu community calls that quote unquote love. And I don't think I'll use the word because I think we're going to get demonetized for it.
Yeah.
But there's a word with J, a 5-letter word starting with J, ending with D. That's often used with in relation to acts of terror.
Okay.
So love, JD, that word, right? They call it that because they see it as a way to convert Hindus into Islam, which is not true. People are getting married for love and for feelings and whatnot, right?
Or money.
Yeah.
The best.
I mean, whatever works.
Kidding.
And it's interesting you bring that up with reference to that love J thing in India, like the conspiracy theory behind it. So the political aspect of it, and I guess I don't want to go too deep into this because I know Indian politics are super complex. but in general, are there certain political parties that kind of lean more into that narrative versus others that are more liberal or more progressive in terms of just, religious coexistence? And what are your opinions on that?
So you are right. It is complicated. I personally am not a fan of the current Indian government because I think they are a little bit of I shouldn't even say a little bit. I think they're a Hindu nationalist government.
The whole idea. Yep.
Yeah. So I think they promote these feelings to get more votes. So I'm not shy to say it. I understand other people may be a little bit hesitant. I don't think the alternative is good, but they're not Hindu nationalists. They may be financially corrupt. I don't think there's a good option. Just saying.
Right,
That's
I hear you.
for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question, Secular Skye?
That answered it quite well. I'd been hoping to kind of get a little bit of the perspective of someone who was from India or had family ties to India. And I really appreciate the time.
Sweet. Well, it was nice hearing from you. Thanks for calling in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah,
Thanks for
you
calling.
too. All right.
All right,
Talk to
take
you
it
guys
easy.
another time. All right, bye.
Bye. All right, I mean, we only got a couple minutes left. So is there anything else you think we haven't covered? I mean, I'm sure there's a whole
A lot,
smorgasbord.
probably.
There's a lot. There's a
But
lot.
any important information you'd like to part out with?
I think I want to leave people with a movie recommendation.
Yes,
A movie?
please.
A movie recommendation.
Okay.
Yes, please.
There's a Bollywood movie called Two States.
2 states.
Yes, it's an interesting movie about a North Indian and South Indian couple, like one North Indian and one South Indian person,
I fucking love
trying to get
Bollywood.
together, and it's quite interesting because you see a lot of those memes that I told you about. You see how there's a difference in tradition, a difference in practices, difference in expectations between these two different communities. I think it's worth a watch.
When was it like released ish?
I want to
Is it,
say
older?
I want to say 2010s.
Oh, okay.
Mid 2010s. It's not like incredibly unwatchable.
Darn it.
Although
I love like old Bollywood
the
so
classic,
much.
really campy ones. Yeah,
Yes.
those are fun.
Oh. Well, this has
real
been
quick,
super informative.
it has. I learned a lot from Ameet. A perfect guest.
Thank you.
You made her
real
like,
quick,
yeah, you like got Ethan and I to just shut up. Like, it
that
was
was
just really
Rarity.
interesting. Like, we didn't have to like we didn't have to fill anything in. It was great. Not that I'm not trying to be like, wow, shut up or anything, but like, we love you.
Yeah. Stilette, I see your question there. I don't think the caste system is better than a capitalist society or a meritocracy, because the caste system, you can't change your caste easily. You can either throw away your caste or you're born into a particular caste. I prefer systems where you have more control. I'm not the biggest fan of like the capitalism that we see in the US, like unbridled capitalism.
Right.
But at the same time, I think you do have way more control than if it was purely caste based, purely based on your birth. And like the system in India is not purely caste based either. There is a wealth element that goes into it. If you're rich, nobody cares what caste you're in.
Real quick, I'd like to thank top tier patrons of this channel: City Plaza, Left Right Left, Ryan Hammond, Kenneth Leonard, Skye, Secular Rarity, Philip Leitch, Richard Gilliver, _atheism, Ameet Mathew, Ray Sylvester, and Gerudo Sand. Thank you so much for your patronage. And thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Thanks for
Ameet,
being
it's been
here,
a
Ameet.
pleasure.
This was a blast.
Fuck yeah, it was. I really enjoyed this episode. We kicked ass tonight.
High five, guys.
Woohoo! Hey, wait. Hang on. I'll high five Ameet.
Oh, wait.
There we go.
This hand. There we go.
All right, everybody, get some sleep, and we'll see you next week.
Good night.
Hi, folks.